just wanted to introduce my colleague Mike Robb, who's part of our team, so he is awesome. I do have 4 kids. They're 6, 5, 3, and 3 months, so I definitely don't sleep. But my wife is a rock star, so that makes all the difference. I'm just going to start by showing a short video, and then I'll get into my presentation. So let's take a look at this.
The global youth culture. More connected, but never more alone. Always seeking pleasure, but never satisfied. A worldwide suicide epidemic. Sexually broken and confused, raised on pornography, taught there is no absolute truth, only preference. How do we communicate the gospel to these young people who have such a negative view of God? How can we show them the love of Jesus in a language they'll understand? In Steiger, our heart is to bridge the gap between the church and the global youth culture. We do this by raising up missionaries and equipping the local church to proclaim the message of Jesus in a relevant way to culture today. Our vision is to establish 100 city teams by 2025, reaching 1 million global youth every year.
So our mission is to reach what we call the global youth culture. And so this is an interesting phenomenon that has emerged over the last few decades, where you've got young people, so in our case we're focused on 17 to 35-year-olds all over the globe that are influenced by similar voices. So they're following the same social media influencers, they're subscribing to the same YouTube channels, and generally they're very connected like never before. And so they're similar on superficial things like music and fashion and trends like that, but they're also similar on deeper things like their worldview and their sense of morality. And so generally you have this global youth culture who are culturally distant from the church. They have kind of a secular humanistic worldview. And the church, we in the church generally are struggling to reach this global youth culture, whether it's here in the US or Europe, Middle East, really all over the globe. And so I want to illustrate this to you by doing a little bit of an exercise, a quiz, okay? So you got to take this seriously, because if you don't pass the quiz, you're going to have to leave, and the other ministries will be mad at me. So take a look. I want you to write down, or if you're really with it, you can take a picture of these 6 countries: USA, Turkey, Albania, Brazil, Lebanon, and Ukraine. And I'm going to show you some images of some young people that were at events that we did in one of these 6 countries, and you have to guess which country they're from. Okay? So let's go for it. First one. Take a look at these people, how they're dressed, what they look like, where do you think they're from? Go ahead, say it out loud, be bold.
Ukraine.
Ukraine, Albania. That's impressive, because this is Albania, all right? So Albania is a very poor country. Global youth culture is in not just in kind of Western rich countries, it's all over the globe. Okay, what about this one? Brazil, that's good. Someone said Turkey, which is impressive, because this is Turkey. Turkey's 99.99% Muslim. Those girls don't look like Muslims to me. All right, so that totally reflects how globalization of youth culture has impacted even the Muslim world. And it's actually changed a lot of the mindset and the ways that we can engage young people in the Muslim world. What about this one? Okay, Ukraine. Everyone was stunned in silence. I understand. All right, what about these guys? U.S., that's good, but wrong. This is in the heart of the Middle East. All right, so these kids could be in a coffee shop here in Chicago, right? The way they're dressed. What about these guys? U.S. Okay, if they're smiling and happy, they're Americans. Right? And then the last one, finally, Brazil. Okay, so I think you get the point, though, right? It's this global youth culture. So what is influencing this global youth culture? There are really 4 primary spheres of influence. The first is pop culture, entertainment industry, movie stars, rock stars, things of that nature. So like the Taylor Swifts of the world, who, if you're following her, is very politically active, who's pushing a certain worldview and is really shaping and influencing a lot of people here and around the world. Then you've got the rise of YouTube stars or internet stars, so people that have platforms on YouTube, daily vloggers, people that are young people who are consuming content in entirely new ways because of things like YouTube, video games where people are finding their identity and their accomplishment and their community in the world of video games and spending a crazy amount of time there. And then of course pornography, which is just the growth and pervasive nature of pornography, which is literally rewiring our brains. It's changing our views on sexuality and relationships and affecting, all sorts of things in our culture. So these are things that are influencing the global youth culture. So let's illustrate this. See this guy? Who knows who this is? Anyone? One of the more influential people on the planet. You know?
Paul Logan?
Logan Paul. Nice job. All right. Almost. That's better than the rest of them. Okay. So he's got 19 million subscribers on YouTube. Most of his content is kind of garbage, to be honest with you. I mean, he's not garbage. God loves him, but his content is not that great. But he is an incredibly influential person. To illustrate this is him in Dubai not too long ago. So he's like a rock star, right? All he does is post daily stuff on YouTube. This is the influence of people like that. So what are the philosophical pillars? What do people believe in the global youth culture? Okay, so the first is the idea of secularism, which doesn't mean that everyone is an atheist. What that means is that faith has been privatized and marginalized, and you can believe whatever you want so long as you don't believe that your way is the only way and that you don't push your views on others. That's the idea of secularism amongst the global youth culture, and that naturally lends itself to this idea of relativism, that there is no transcendent truth, that there's no one right and wrong, that morality is like an ice cream flavor. You have your favorites, I have mine, and we can't settle it between us. And then that naturally leads to the idea of tolerance, which is poorly defined as all ideas are equal. And if you criticize or disagree with someone else's ideas, then you're a hater. And so you create this culture of conformity, and you have this paradoxical moment which all is tolerated except the intolerant, and all is included except the exclusive. So in general terms, and you can go into a lot more detail on this is the worldview of the global youth culture. And you see this all over the planet. So I live in Minnesota, and so we went onto the streets of the University of Minnesota, and we asked some basic worldview questions of some random students that we engage with, and I just wanted to show you their answers because I think they're pretty insightful.
How do you think we all got here? How did life begin?
It started with the Big Bang. I don't really know much more than that.
So I believe in evolution and that we evolved from primates. I mean, there's proof that our DNA is 98% the same as chimpanzees, so.
Probably just like a meteorite with like some microbes on it that landed on Earth from a different planet, and they're like eventually evolved to become humans.
What is the purpose of life?
Let me know when you figure it out.
Yeah. I'm still working on that one.
Make your own. Like, I don't think there's no like grand purpose for anybody. Just like everyone, it's just there is no purpose. Make up your own purpose. Run with it.
Help continue the evolution of human beings as a species.
So how do you think that right and wrong are decided?
I don't know.
I think it's different for like everyone, depending on like what they think is right and wrong. Because like people believe in different things, so it can't be the same for everyone.
That goes back to like your morals, I guess. Because your right can be someone else's wrong. So it's all like based on your morality. I take it.
I think that like it depends on yourself and what you think is right and wrong and what you believe in. And as long as you stick to your beliefs and like carry out what the Bible says or what the Quran says or like whatever, then like you're living your life to the fullest, and that's all that matters.
What do you think happens after we die?
I don't know. I mean, isn't that kind of the beauty of it? You know, there's a lot of people who are spiritual and have things in which they believe in, and so it's kind of a manifest of what you believe. I also feel like that is subjective because no one knows, and so I think that's kind of the beauty of it.
All right, we have a full extended version of those interviews that you can see on our website, but I think it's pretty obviously insightful in terms of the view of younger people. So in the US in particular, we work globally, but in the US, the fastest growing religious group is the religiously unaffiliated. And it's especially pronounced amongst younger people. 1 in 11 older Gen Z, according to Barnabas research, can be characterized as engaged Christian. In Chicago area alone, half the population, the entire population, let alone the younger, can be characterized as post-Christian according to Barna research. You can check out their website, see how that's defined. But the point is, this is a growing issue in our own country. And the problem is, this worldview is not consequence-free. The consequence of this, especially amongst the global youth culture, is two things. One, loneliness. This is an incredibly lonely generation that is searching for belonging, is searching for love, but the worldview gives them no basis for that. And so it's an incredibly lonely generation, and it's a generation that's incredibly feeling this sense of meaningless because their worldview doesn't offer transcendent purpose. And so you have a great rise in depression and anxiety and suicide amongst the generation. And I would contend one of the key contributors to that is the changing worldview of our generation. And so our response to this should be a broken heart. Like that of Nehemiah in chapter 1, verse 4, when he said, when I heard these things, I sat down and I wept. And for some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God in heaven. This should be our first response, because this is a generation that is desperate for answers, but not looking to the church. And part of the problem is that there's this great gap between the church and the global youth culture, so that even within our own cities, we're talking about cross-cultural missions, because it's a different culture where we don't even speak the same language, we don't have the same assumptions. And so there's a great challenge in reaching this generation. To illustrate this in this way, consider how people might view Christianity. You have people with the biblical perspective, they're followers of Jesus. People with the legalistic, we're putting extra barriers in the way. Then as we move along, we have people that have a sympathetic or favorable, nominal view. This was America for decades, right? This was who we were. But then as you look along, we have people that have an apathetic, cynical, negative, and finally anti-Christian or hostile view. The challenge is the vast majority of our evangelistic efforts today are geared towards that nominal audience. And that's because the heroes of the past, the models of the past, like the Billy Grahams, that's their models because that was their audience. The challenge is for us that a growing percentage of people now fit the apathetic to anti-Christian paradigm, so their view of the world is different, which means our approach needs to change. Not the gospel itself, but our approach needs to change because our audience is changing. And so our heart as a mission is to go after these people, the apathetic to anti-Christian people of our culture in the US and all over the globe. So what we do is we bridge the gap between the church and the global youth culture. We raise up missionaries and equip the local church to reach this generation by establishing teams. We establish teams in cities around the world. These teams are specialists at reaching this global youth culture. And they engage them through creative evangelism, relevant discipleship, and local church partnership. And the cool thing about this is they can unify and mobilize as churches in an area to have a catalytic impact in reaching this global youth culture, because this is a problem that all of us in the church are facing today. So specifically, what does the Steiger City team do? First of all, we develop a culture of seeking God, because we will not reach this generation outside of God's power. And so that starts by seeking Him. Then we establish a regular relational presence in the secular scene. We engage in regular creative evangelism. We create spaces that foster discipleship. We call it discipleship bridges, because the people we're reaching are not generally ready to step into a church context. So we have to disciple them where they are. Then we host annual, large-scale evangelistic events. We'll do concerts or online things, or we'll do art exhibitions, but just large-scale events that can have a catalytic impact. We offer local church training where we help equip the church how to reach and disciple this generation, establish a network of church and ministry partners, and finally, we continue to invest in new leaders, planting new city teams in other places. So to illustrate this a little bit, this is one of our high-impact evangelistic tools called No Longer Music, a band that preaches the gospel in city squares and clubs and festivals all over the globe, sharing the gospel message. This was in Ukraine last year. We do creative street evangelism. This was in Amsterdam not too long ago. We establish community houses for discipleship where people that are engaged can come engage in community, meets that felt need of loneliness, but also offers them opportunity to be discipled. We do informal Bible studies where people are able to engage with the text in a way that is comfortable for them. So we do that in all different kinds of ways. And we're doing that all over the world. Last year we were able to reach over 100,000 people, and we were able to establish over 1,000 new discipleship relationships. These are real, individual, verified people who are engaging in ongoing discipleship activities as a result of the ministry activities that are going on. So we do this by training young people at our Steiger Mission School in Germany. It's a 10-week program that's designed to equip young people to know how to reach this global youth culture and establish these teams around the world. Our goal is to establish 100 teams in 100 cities around the world, including 10 in the US. We're just starting to do things in the US because we see how the culture is changing here. In our history in Europe and the Middle East, we feel like we can begin to take that here. So we actually have one team in the US in Minneapolis, but we'd like to see more developed in the future, which is why we're here. We want to reach 1 million every year and engage in 10,000 new discipleship relationships. So our big question for you is, what can we do to see this happen here in Chicago? And specifically, who do we know, young evangelists and leaders and influencers, that can help be a catalyst for seeing this team start in Chicago? And because we believe that Chicago is a city where God has called us and where we could see a team like this raised up, where we could train and equip young people to establish a team like this. We have a couple of resources for you on the table if you want to grab one. Jesus in the Secular World is our book about kind of addressing this issue. Rock Priest talks about how this ministry was started. It's actually started by my parents in Amsterdam in the 80s. And then this booklet shares a little more detail about who we are, so you can check those out. And certainly come to our table afterwards and we'll discuss this question about how we can see this happen in Chicago. There are a number of other ways in the booklet that we're looking for people to help contribute, but our heart really is to see this ministry happen in Chicago. So hopefully you can be part of seeing that happen. So thank you so much, appreciate it.